on here, all that. I hesitate to show you this, but let's play something real quick. There is a couple questions that it might ask you. How many acres are in this legal address? So let me show you a slick, quick method. You guys know what a numerator is? And the denominator? I'm the denominator. What was that new one Schwarzenegger was in? They go, is there a problem? He goes, yeah, I'm old. And that one where he was the sheriff. I'm old. No, after he became the governor, he created that sheriff where the drug dealers went through his city. I forget, Last Stand, might have been. But they punch him and he falls through the door on the ground. And the guy is, what's wrong, Sheriff? And he rolls over and goes, I'm old. Okay, doesn't matter. Okay, you know what the denominator is? The denominator is the bottom number of a fraction. Right? Yes. Say yes. Yes. All right, the Indian guy's saying yes, and you know they're good at math. So follow him. We did that one day with John Paul Singh was in here. And he kept coming up with the math answers, and finally people were just watching him. And he goes, 7. They all go, yeah, we agree. The denominator so take the denominators just singly by themselves. What's the denominator on 1/2? 2. The denominator on the quarters, because remember we drew them as the northwest 1/4, is a 4, right? So in this section where I've got 2 of them colored in, I have got the denominator 2 times 4 times 4, right? Those are the 3 numbers. I just circled them. 1/2, 1/4, and 1/4. 2 times 4 times 4. What is 2 times 4 times 4? 32. How many acres are in a quadrant, or in a section? We started off with the entire section was 1 square mile, and I told you it was also 640 acres, right? Yeah. How many times does 32 go into 640? 4 times. Tell them. Yeah, see? It's only a stereotype because it's true. All right? He got the answer. It's 20. How many times does 32 go into 640? 20 times. How many acres were in that section we just drew? 20. It works. So, hint, 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 if there's a question that says, how many acres are in this description, and they give you 1/2 times 120 times 120, you could draw the pictures out, color them in, and count the number of 10 acres plus 10 acres and do all that. Or you literally could take the denominators. In this first one right here, go back to number 1, northeast quadrant of the northeast quadrant of the northeast quadrant. What are the denominators on that one? 4, 4, and 4. Right? The northeast quadrant, of the northeast quadrant of the northeast quadrant. That's 4 times 4 times 4 is 64. How many times does 64 go into 640 acres? 10 times. How many acres did we say the very first one was? 10. It works. So if someone says I'm the 1/5 of this or 1/20th of this, you literally could just take the denominators, hint, 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 multiply and get the math, divide it into 640, it'll tell you how many acres are in that. Less than a minute. Cool. There is a video on the online section for those of you online or for you guys here. I redo this. It's only about 6 minutes long, but you can watch it and go through it again. Okay? Now, for a second, let me show you some other tricks that may be helpful in your real world or in a future exercise in knowledge. Just for the second, I want you guys to ignore this and go back to your street address thing that you guys know, all right? So if I said, Holly, I got a package and I need you to deliver this to 12 Smith Street in Phoenix, Arizona, United States, and I handed you the package, no Google Maps, no Google Earth, let's go back old school, and a map, how would you find 12 Smith Street, Phoenix, Arizona, United States to deliver this package? What would you look for first? You're assuming one thing. Let me ask you, what would you look for first? What? No, not this regular street address. See, almost all international people get it right. They look for United States first. You just assumed that you knew where but it's true. So you look for the United States, then you'd look for Arizona, then you'd look for Phoenix, then you look for 12 Smith Street. How do we read addresses then? You guys do it so quick in your life that you don't even know what you're doing. How do you technically read an address when we try and find a spot? We read it backwards. We read it backwards. We start at Arizona. If we were given a map, first thing we would do is we'd pull out a map of the United States, then we would find Arizona, then we would find Phoenix, then we would find 12 Smith Street. So we actually read our addresses backwards. And we write them backward. We just don't know we do it because we do it so easy. Watch this. United States, Arizona, Phoenix, 12 Smith Street. Read it backwards. So if someone said to you, here's the address, but I want you to find the location, like they might on an exam, how do you do that? Because up to now, what I've done is drawn a location and you've given me the address. We're going to go backwards now. I'm going to go, here's the address. Which one of these colored in sections is the spot? So what you would do is you take that address and you go, Principal Meridian number 2. Oh, there it is. 3 ranges west, 3 tier north. Oh, there it is. Section 26. Oh, there it is. The northeast quadrant of the northeast quadrant of the northeast. Oh, it's that one. You literally read it backwards. You start from the big and go small. So you'd start at the principal meridian, you'd start at the range in the township, then you'd go to the section, then you'd go to the whatever it is, the northeast quadrant, southeast quadrant, north half, and you just follow it. Northeast quadrant of the northeast quadrant of the northeast quadrant. There's the big one, the small one, the smallest one. People at home are probably going crazy because it's been the same slide now for like 40 minutes. It's the same thing. There's just a lot in this information. And there's a lot on the test that they ask. Now, one more thing and we'll leave this alone. If I'm in section 1, look in your book, look on the board, look at whatever it is, section 1, and I go north, what section am I in? Section 36. This goes back to the McDonald Speedway principle I just gave you. If I'm in section 1 and I walk north, I walk into a new section of the range above me. Huh? Are we just throwing out random numbers for fun? 41. I always wanted to race, and if I wanted to be a racer, I would put pi as my number on the car. So it'd start at one door and just wrap all the way around the car. Here comes the pi car. Where are we at? If you're at section 1 and you walk north, you're in section 36, but you're in the range above you, right here. Here's where we are. We walk there. Now I'm still in 3 ranges west, but now I'm 4 tiers north, which is the Speedway McDonald's example I just gave you. How did we go south and end up with a north address? Because we changed counties, or we changed tiers in this particular example. Not to beat the dead horse, if I'm on 6 and I walk west, 1, right? If I'm in section 6 and I walk west, I'm in section 1, but I'm now over here where I'm in 4 ranges west, but still in 3 tiers north. Keep that in mind. I can change by moving. If I'm in 31 and I walk south, I'm in section 6, right? Because those section numbers are in each township, just like I showed you. If I'm here and walk here, I've still got the same thing going on up here. It's just a different township. Are we good? All right. So now what happens, because I got 10 acres. I don't want to live in 10 acres. I have to create the third method of IDing address, which we call the lot and block method. The lot and block method, or plat. It uses a subdivision plat. It looks something like what's on the screen, but this tells you then what happens is I take this 10 acres and let's blow it up, and I'm going to build, here's the northwest quadrant, we'll call it number 1 because that was the number 1 address I used, which is the northeast quadrant of the northeast quadrant of the northeast quadrant, right? We all get that. I'm going to build modular estates, and then I put lot numbers on them, so that now these are inside of the rectangular survey method. So actually, I live at modular estate lot 1 of the northeast quadrant of the northeast quadrant of the northeast quadrant of section 26(3). You can't come to a different driveway because that would be lot 2 of the northeast quadrant of the northeast quadrant, right? So what we're doing is basically dividing that 10 acres into smaller, hey, I built the modular estates next to the Jefferson estates, next to the Johnson estates. So we record these in a plat book, and those plat books are really huge. They look like the Harry Potter book. You pull it out and you set it on the table and you open it up and it says there's modular estates per plat book number 1, where plat book number 1 is defined as the northeast quadrant of the northeast quadrant of the northeast quadrant of section 26, 3 ranges west, 3 tiers north, a principal area number 2. Oh wait, he lives in the south. Oh, I got to put that book away. And I have to get the book out for the southeast quadrant of the northeast quadrant of the northeast quadrant and open it up and find out where it's at. Modular estates is page 7. So it might say, to make it easier on you guys, lot 7 of modular estates per plat book, page 7, plat book number 2. Everybody see what I'm getting at? They're trying to condense a lot of this so that we don't have to deal with that. That condensed may be plat book number 7. Actually, let me go back to my example. It's plat book number 2. On page 7 of that is that drawing that you see on the screen for modular estates, where it has all the plot plan laid out, all the houses. So I live at lot 1 per page 7 of plat book number 2, and that's all defined as the northeast quadrant, so we can just do it quicker now. And that's what you'll see on most legal descriptions. Lot 7, modular estates per page 7 of plat book 428, where 428 has a whole definition based on the government rectangular survey system. So they don't have to do that all the time. You could also use the meets and bounds inside of the rectangular system. We could have done that whole Skull County to the center thread, back up to the point of beginning of the northeast quadrant of the northeast quadrant of the northeast quadrant. So I can put the meets and bounds inside of the rectangular system as well. All right? Are we okay? Really? Because I lied to you. I didn't build a house in lot 1. I actually built a skyscraper or a condo. Remember I told you we'd get back to condos. So what is wrong with this picture on the board? What is wrong with that picture that's hanging on the wall? What's wrong with every picture in the world? That picture hanging on the wall is two-dimensional. And all we have talked about so far is north, south, east, and west, right? We actually don't live in 2 dimensions. We live in 3 dimensions because that condo store that I built, we actually now have people living vertically. So the reality is these 2 people that live on the 10th floor and the 2nd floor literally may have the same address because you're looking at them like this. You got to remember we live like this. So we have to deal with what's called elevation. We have elevation issues that we need to deal with. So before we get into that, let's look at another thing. Let me ask you a question. Nobody today. We're all getting lazy in our old age. I actually didn't wear mine. What time is it? Oh, wait, there we go. We got one. You got a watch on. Tell me what time it is. 10:37. My clock says 10:41. This says 10:38. Who's right? Well, first of all, I am because it's my class. So that makes me right. No, the reality is we know what right is, probably the cell phone, because it's taking a signal off a tower, which comes from, we have the atomic clock, which we know exactly what time it is, right? So we do know a time. The problem is we get a lot of this kind of stuff. Well, I got 10:41, 10:39. So let's talk about elevation. There's the ground right out there. Are you guys at ground level? No, you walk down, so you're actually kind of sitting below ground level, right? Well, I got news for you. That's not even ground level. That's about 770 feet above sea level. We have a zero height that is defined as sea level. And just so you'll sleep better tonight, you know what sea level is defined as? The median height of the New York Harbor. That's what sea level is defined as. When you go to Denver and you stand on that plaque that says 5,280 feet above sea level, it's measuring the absolute value. Well, that seems a little stupid if you walked out here and stood outside on the sidewalk with me and I told you, hey, you're 770 feet above sea level, because that makes no sense to you. I'm standing on the ground. So we have a measurement and we have a datum point. Datum, by the way, is singular for data. We have a 0 point, but it makes no sense for us to use the 0 point because those numbers sound off. So we will use what's called a benchmark, which is a relative height. So I may say, well, I'm 2 feet above the Mooresville benchmark, where the Mooresville benchmark is defined as 770 feet above sea level. That way you can say, well, I'm at 2 feet and not 772 feet, because that makes no sense. So we have this data point, which is the 0, sea level. But there are benchmarks all over the country that we use as the height. So they would say, well, I'm so-and-so, so. Think about this. I'm only 20 years older than him. That's a benchmark. All right? I don't want to say how old I am, so I would just say than him, and he's the relative benchmark, and you would know how old he is to get my height. So we use that because here's the problem. The person that lives on the 10th floor may live at 91 to 100 feet of Lot 1, of Modulin Estates, of the northwest quadrant, of the northwest quadrant, of the northwest quadrant, while the person that lives on the 2nd floor may live at 21 to 30 feet of Modulin Estates, Lot 1, of the northeast quadrant, of the northeast quadrant, of the northeast quadrant, right? So we need to know height, because so far all we've talked about is north and west and east and south. We've got a third dimension that we deal with, height. So there is going to be potentially some elevation in your legal address if you're selling condos. Sweet?